angels, it's Hailey Reese, and oh my goodness, I have not been here on my channel in what feels like forever. I think it's been like over a week now since I have filmed, edited, or uploaded a video, which is record-breaking for me, I'm pretty sure. I don't know if you guys can tell by my voice, but I have been incredibly sick over the last week. Stuffy nose, sore throat, missing voice, the whole shebang, but today I am finally feeling better and I have missed you guys far too much to go any longer without getting on here. So I am back, raspy voice and all, and I am so excited because today we are going to be diving into the ghosts of the Queen Mary ship. I have had a fascination with the Queen Mary ever since I learned about it. I literally used to beg my friends to go to the Queen Mary with me and it never ended up working out, but I definitely, especially after really diving into and researching all that is the Queen Mary, I will definitely be going there sometime in the future because there are far too many fascinating aspects of this ship that I just can't fathom passing up the opportunity to go there. So make sure you give this video a thumbs up or drop a comment down below if you guys want me to go to the Queen Mary. Before today's video, I thought why not dive into the history of the Queen Mary, all of the spirits that allegedly haunt it, and why it is deemed one of the most haunted locations. Before I get into it though, I just very quickly want to let you guys know that my friendly hat Hailey Reese merch is running low, and once they are sold out, they will never be returning again. So if you guys want to get your very own Hailey Reese friendly ghost hat, I will have a link down in my description because we are down to the last few and I want to make sure that those of you who want to get it are able to get it. But let's get into the Queen Mary. So docked in Long Beach Harbor is the Queen Mary. Now the Queen Mary, interestingly enough, was actually bigger, faster, and more powerful than the Titanic. It is known as one of the most haunted locations in the world, and definitely rightfully so. Now initially, the Queen Mary actually hosted some of the most rich, powerful, and famous people in the world. But in 1939, when World War II would break out, the Queen Mary would actually be repurposed to transport troops for the wars. So it was completely refitted in order to be able to transport these troops. They actually repainted the Queen Mary kind of like this dull, darkish gray color, and it gained the nickname the Gray Ghost, which I thought was super fascinating considering it would go on to be incredibly haunted, but I also think that it's kind of just a cool name in general. So the Gray Ghost, or the Queen Mary, actually played a significant role in transporting troops during the time of World War II. Its role was actually super significant in the transporting of troops because the Queen Mary was incredibly fast and powerful, like I mentioned earlier, so it played a massive role in assisting the troops to outrun the enemies. By the end of the war, the Queen Mary would have transported around 800,000 troops and would actually set the record of the most people ever put on a floating vessel. Now, at the close of the war, the ship would actually proceed to transport war brides and their children to the United States and Canada. These would actually be known as bride and baby voyages, and the Queen Mary would actually do 13 of these voyages in 1946. Now, once the Queen Mary, or the Gray Ghost's role in the World War concluded, as World War II came to an end, the Queen Mary was once again refurbished and redone to resume being an elegant cruise ship. In 1967, the Queen Mary was actually withdrawn from being a cruise ship once again and sold to Long Beach, where she would be docked and remain ever since, becoming the hotel and museum that it is today. So why is the Queen Mary so haunted? Well, first and foremost, there are actually approximately 50 recorded deaths during the Queen Mary's lifespan on the Queen Mary itself. However, the Queen Mary was also involved in a fatal accident during World War II when it would actually slice another ship in half, resulting in 337 deaths. So not only were there 50 known deaths on the Queen Mary actually resulted in the death of 337 people after slicing another ship in half during World War II. Alongside these deaths, think about how many people were on the ship during its lifespan, both associated with World War II and also just passengers of the ship. So who are the spirits that are actually said to haunt the Queen Mary? Well, there's actually quite a few, and interestingly enough, what I really enjoyed about researching into the Queen Mary is that there's not just one or two that are commonly seen. There are a bunch of very distinctive spirits that live aboard the Queen Mary. So first and foremost, one of the most widely known haunted areas on the Queen Mary is actually the isolation ward. Any sick, mostly contagious passengers would be put into this isolation ward to essentially pass away. It was the ship's area of confinement, much like what we have in hospitals for individuals who were incredibly contagious or super sick, and they would be kept within this isolation ward where a lot of them would proceed to die. Naturally, this area holds a very heavy energy and a feeling of dread, and there's a lot of voices, sounds, and uneasy incidences that occur in this section of the ship. And rightfully so. I feel like that's a type of space where you would expect to be haunted. I mean, people went there when they were incredibly ill and never completed their voyages. So it doesn't surprise me that the isolation ward is one of the most widely talked about areas of the ship. Another area of the ship that is super haunted though is actually the boiler room. Now, people who have went within the boiler room claim to have experienced obnoxious and unexplainable banging of the pipes, sudden changes of the temperature as in it gets super hot or super cold. The engine room door will actually occasionally heat up for no apparent reason at all, and an unexplainable smoke will appear as well. Now, many people believe that this unexplained activity is actually that of a 17-year-old sailor named John Henry, who actually died in a fire there during World War. Now, down in the boiler room, there's actually a super haunted area called Door 13. Now, this area is actually said to be haunted by a spirit named John Petter, who was a firefighter. He was actually crushed by the emergency door in 1966 and died. He's actually seen as a ghostly figure in blue overalls who's more commonly seen around that specific door, Door 13. The fact that he would be haunting that door really comes as no surprise to me as well, because like we've talked about in the past, more often than not, spirits that are seen haunting specific locations typically have died a sudden or traumatic death and remain lingering around that area, which would make complete sense in what happened to John. Now, Queen Salon in First Class Lounge has a typical woman in white who is seen in a white vintage dress dancing to unheard music all on her own. This specific spirit gives off a very happy energy. She loves to dance and she doesn't recognize anybody around her, meaning she most likely just feels like she's still in that time period dancing away, which is actually one of the nicer spirits that you could encounter. There's also another woman in a white dress who's more often than not seen late at night near the lobby. Now, there's also said to be a more sinister spirit seen within the lobby as well, who wears a yellow fedora and has notably very yellow, rotten teeth. Supposedly, when you encounter him, he kind of gives off this very stomach-turning energy and has a darker aura and energy to him. Then, in the ship's bar area, there's said to be a spirit of a man in 1930s clothing with slicked back hair and a top hat. Now, what's super interesting about him is that he's actually known to sit next to unsuspecting guests and actually strikes up conversation with them, when he'll either completely fade away right before their eyes or walk through the wall towards the men's restroom. I mean, just picture this. Imagine somebody in 1930s clothing, a man in 1930s clothing, sitting down next to you, striking up a conversation and either completely disappearing in front of your eyes or walking through a wall. Now, the first class swimming pool, now closed, has spirits of its own as well. Particularly women in 1930s style swimwear are seen and heard lounging by the first class swimming pool. Much like the women in white, these spirits seem completely unbothered by anybody in this physical dimension approaching, and they don't seem to notice anybody watching them either. People will also claim to hear the voices of women, and when they look into the first class swimming pool, which is no longer open, they will actually see wet footprints and even hear the noises of people jumping in the pool and splashing around, which is completely impossible. Now, both the first class and second class pools have children's spirits attracted to them. These spirits are heard giggling, laughing, splashing around, and just being what would sound like normal children. The most famous of these children's spirits is that of a little girl named Jackie. Now, Jackie is actually said to have drowned in the second-class pool, but she's seen haunting both the first-class and second-class pool area. Jackie is more often than not seen holding a teddy bear. She often cries out for her mommy and daddy, and she even is said to whistle or sing songs like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. She's actually known to sing or whistle back children's songs, so paranormal investigators and individuals who want to have an experience with Jackie will more often than not use the tactic of singing these children's songs to get her to sing them back or to draw her towards them. Now, Jackie is said to have another child spirit as a companion named Sarah. Sarah has been described kind of as more of Jackie's protector, and she's the more mischievous of the two. She's been known to actually slap visitors, tug on clothing, and even push guests. She's kind of seen as the more troublesome and overall mischievous spirit, but the two are more often than not seen and experienced together. Even spookier is yet another spirit of the pool area that is said to come along with both the smell of cigarettes and very aggressive growling. This spirit has been nicknamed Grumpy because those who come into contact with him or have an experience with him sense this very negative, grumpy energy, and then they will hear a growl from him. Now, the pool's changing rooms are also said to be incredibly haunted and come with kind of a darker story behind it. A woman was actually said to be murdered and assaulted in there, so a lot of people that go in there experience a feeling of dread and a very heavy, nauseating feeling. Now, one more thing to note about the pool area is that many guests have claimed to have experienced and seen what appears to be a vortex-like energy where they believe the spirits are coming and going from. There's also said to be the spirit of a little boy named Daniel who has a tendency to just stop and stare right at you. He recognizes that you're there and he just wants to look right at you, which sounds super freaky to me. Daniel is more often than not seen wearing blue, and like I said, is known for his staring. Now, B deck is claimed to be the most haunted section of the ship. The Queen Mary claims that the B deck is a space where most guests will have reported having a paranormal experience, specifically room B340. Now, this room is so haunted. It was actually closed to the public for decades because next to everybody that would stay in this room would either leave in the middle of the night or demand a refund because the room was that unbearable to stay in. Now, it actually used to be 3 third-class staterooms that were converted into 1 large room. Now this room is actually open up to the public, and one of the things that I find the eeriest about this room in particular is that it comes equipped with a Ouija board, a crystal ball, and tarot cards to communicate with the other side. Now, in my opinion, when you're taking an already incredibly haunted room and you're allowing guests to utilize Ouija boards and all of these items in it, it's just a recipe for further terrifying paranormal experiences. Guests reported the blankets being ripped off of them in the night and then seeing a man standing at the end of the bed with a sinister smile. The phone would ring, and when they would answer it, nobody would be there. The taps would turn on and off, lights would flicker, guests would get scratched. Basically, everything that you could experience in a paranormal haunting would happen in this room times 10. This room is so notoriously haunted, it has attracted paranormal investigators and thrill seekers all across the world to it. Now, something that I found super fascinating about the Queen Mary is, unlike other haunted locations I've researched into, they embrace and share the fact that the Queen Mary is super haunted. They don't try to steer away from that stereotype or steer away from those stories. They embrace it and actually share with their guests when asked some of their experiences. Overall, I think given the history of the ship, it's no surprise that it's so haunted. What I like most about this location is that there are so many different spirits that come from so many different backgrounds and different energies within the ship. It is definitely on my bucket list of places to stay overnight, and I am so inclined to do so, especially after researching into all of the different spirits that occupy it. What do you guys think of the Queen Mary and all of the spirits that occupy it? Make sure you go ahead and let me know in the comments below, and also let me know if there's any other paranormal locations you want me to dive into the spirits of. With that being said, that is it for today's video. It feels so good to be back. I have missed you guys so much. Now all I gotta do is get the rest of my voice back and we will be smooth sailing. But I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you guys are new to my channel or you are just not yet subscribed but you do enjoy my videos, make sure you go ahead and click that subscribe button and join the Reese's Pieces. We would absolutely love to have you, and please give this video a big thumbs up. If you did enjoy it, it makes me super happy to see that you guys are enjoying my content, so please do that. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness, and until next time, I love you guys.